After the dust of the Troll Wars had settled, and King Thoradin's mighty reign began to fade into legend, the Empire of Azeroth surged northward. Human settlers, emboldened by triumph and driven by hope, ventured into the wild frontier of Lordaeron, a land once fiercely guarded by the Amani forest trolls. Roughly 2,700 years before the Dark Portal tore open, these pioneers laid down roots in the Eastweald. Forest gave way to farmland, wilderness turned to civilization. New Arathi settlements arose from the soil, each one a symbol of the human spirit's unrelenting march forward. But even as swords were sheathed, another force stirred, quiet, radiant, and enduring. From the chaos of war, the Church of the Holy Light emerged. Over the centuries, its influence spread, like dawn breaking across the horizon. Temples enshrined bloomed across the land, each a beacon of hope in uncertain times. And in the Eastweald, among ancient trees and rising spires, the holiest sites of all took root. None more revered than the city of Stratholme. In its prime, Stratholme wasn't just a city. It was sacred ground. Its waters, blessed and pure, were said to cleanse even the darkest of magics. A miracle bottled from the very essence of the light. Over time, the region came under the full banner of the Kingdom of Lordaeron, but the echoes of its past, of war, of faith, of miracles, still linger in the stone, in the soil, and in the stories passed down through generations. Among those stories stands a chapter of glory and gravitas. Stratholme was the kingdom's second largest city, surpassed only by Lordaeron's shining capital. Its spires, sanctuaries, and cobbled streets made it not only a center of commerce, but a cradle of the light's greatest champions. It was here, within the hollowed walls of Alonza's chapel, that Archbishop Alonza's Fowl gathered his most trusted followers. And from faith and flame he forged the Knights of the Silver Hand, a new order born to stand against darkness. 5 were chosen to carry that light into battle, among them the noble Uther the Lightbringer and Saidan Dathrahan. Together they would become legends, their legacy ignited in Stratholme's sacred heart. And on the eye of another great trial, as whispers of war reached even the edges of Quel'Thalas, Tirion, Alleria Windrunner, Khadgar, and their army arrived near the city. From there they marched north, toward destiny and the burning of an elven homeland. But even the brightest lights can cast the darkest shadows, and Stratholme, once a beacon of faith and strength, soon found itself caught in the storm of the Second War. Renegade soldiers from the treacherous kingdoms of Alterac, traitors to the Alliance, were dragged through its gates in chains. They were held within the city's walls, awaiting transport to Capital City for interrogation, or worse. Yet Stratholme was more than just a prison for the faithless. It was a vital artery in the Alliance war machine, an essential port town in the Northern Kingdom's greatest source of oil. As war raged across the Eastern Kingdoms, Stratholme prepared a massive shipment of oil, fuel for the forges, the fleets, and the fight for survival. But the Horde, ever cunning and relentless, struck a devastating blow. Saboteurs crept through the city like shadows on the wind. They crippled the oil platforms, ignited the refineries, and then, with fire and fury, the Horde burned Stratholme to the ground. In a single night, the city was lost, and with it, the Alliance's lifeline to Quel'Thalas was severed. A critical blow in a war that had already cost too much. Years passed, but Stratholme's legacy remained entwined with moments of fire and of reckoning. Within the city's Hall of Justice, the echoes of war gave way to a trial that would shake the very foundations of honor and loyalty. Tirion Fordring, one of the first paladins, a hero of the realm, stood accused of treason. His crime? Defending an orc. Not with sword or spell, but with conviction. The orc's name was Eitrig, a weathered warrior from another world, and Tirion, seeing the spark of nobility in a sworn enemy, chose mercy over vengeance. In the eyes of the court, compassion was weakness, justice demanded punishment. Tirion was found guilty, stripped of his title, cut off from the light, exiled from the lands he had once sworn to protect. But Stratholme would not rest quietly. The very next day, the city's walls trembled as a small, disciplined force of orcs stormed the gates, led by a young and fearless war chief, Thrall. Their mission was clear: rescue Eitrig, no matter the cost. In the chaos that followed, as steel clashed and fires burned, Tirion and Eitrig slipped into the wilderness. 2 warriors, bound not by race or allegiance, but by honor. Darkness crept on quiet feet, In the final days before the Third War, Stratholme stood tall, Eastwield's crown jewel, a city of faith, trade, and bustling life. But beneath the rhythm of daily routine, death was already moving through its gates. The grain came from Anderhall, seemingly harmless, stacked high in carts, baked into bread, and broken at family tables. But it was tainted, laced with a plague that did not kill outright, only corrupted. The people ate, and they smiled, and in doing so they sealed their fate. This was no accident, it was a design, a cruel game set in motion by the Dreadlord Mal'Ganis, who had chosen Stratholme with purpose. He needed a densely packed city, one vital to the economy, strategically placed at the heart of the Eastweald. If Stratholme fell, the region would fall with it. Lordaeron's grip would be lost, and the Scourge would gain a throne of ash. As the first infected began to rise, help arrived too late. Prince Arthas Menethil, Uther the Lightbringer, Jaina Proudmoore, and a battalion of soldiers marched into Stratholme's outer reaches, only to discover the grain's grim truth. The city was already lost. For Arthas, the path was clear and terrible. If Stratholme could not be saved, then it had to be purged. He ordered the unthinkable, to slay the living before they could become the dead. Uther refused, so did Jaina, and the paladins who had once called Arthas brother-in-arms turned away, unable to stomach the slaughter he proposed. But the prince pressed on. With sword in hand and fury in his heart, Arthas led his loyalists through the streets. Homes were set ablaze, ash swirled like a blizzard over the rooftops. The screams of the dying, innocent and damned alike, rose like a chorus over cobbled stone now slick with blood. It was not a battle, it was an execution. Among the fire and ruin, Arthas confronted Mal'Ganis, but the Dreadlord did not fall. He merely taunted the prince and fled, daring him to follow to Northrend. And so Arthas left Stratholme behind, a burning ruin, a mass grave, a warning. When Jaina and Uther returned days later, even they, who had feared the worst, were stunned. Corpses lined the streets. What had once been a holy city now lay hollowed and blackened, its soul extinguished. But the horror wasn't over. As the undead tide swept in behind Arthas' retreat, Stratholme fell once more, this time to the Scourge. The Knights of the Silver Hand had tried to prepare, crafting blessed water and hiding supplies in crates across the city. But it was too late. The people they meant to protect had already turned. The city's defenders became its executioners. Stratholme was claimed in full. And the rot only deepened. The man known as Raz Frostwhisper, once human, gave his soul to the Lich King and was reborn in undeath. A lich of cold fury and chilling purpose. In the wake of Arthas' departure and Lordaeron's fall, Kel'Thuzad took command of the ruined city, raising his great necropolis, Naxxramas, above the rotting forest nearby. Stratholme, once a city of light, had become a monument of death. Long after the Third War's fires had scorched the world, Stratholme still burned. A city frozen in time, its ash-choked streets echoing with memories of screams, steel, and silence. But the light had not yet turned its back on this forsaken place. A band of surviving paladins, embers of the once mighty Order of the Silver Hand, dared to enter the cursed ruins. Among them, Brigid Abendus, Alexandros Mograine and his sons, Darion and Renault, Talon Fordring, and Saidan Dathrahan, Lord Commander of their shattered order. They came seeking hope, or redemption. Instead, they found the Scourge. The ambush came swift and merciless. Shadows swelled from alleyways. Screams were swallowed in a rush of bone and rot. Darion was struck, hit by a surge of black magic left him writhing, his soul smoldering with pain. And in the chaos, Saidan was lost. Alone he faced the Dreadlord Balnazzar, a being of cruelty wrapped in cunning. There within the burning corpse of Stratholme, the unthinkable happened. Saidan fell, and Balnazzar, drenched in fell sorcery, slipped into his body like a serpent into a hollow log. The Lord Commander returned, or so it seemed. Reunited and unaware of the deception in their midst, the paladins escaped the ruined city, carrying their wounded and their faith, both quietly unraveling. But the poison had already taken root. Later, Renault Mograine, his heart poisoned, his mind clouded by the whispers of the false Satan, became the instrument of an evil deception. He rode with purpose, urgency in every hoofbeat, to deliver dire news to his father. Tirion, he claimed, had been taken in battle, held for ransom within the ruins of Stratholme, and facing certain death. Alexandros, ever the resolute father and unshakable paladin, did not hesitate. With Fairbanks at his side, he charged toward the city's shattered gates, undaunted, unwilling to forsake his son, no matter the danger that lay ahead. They reached the bridge, but the trap had already been sprung. The dead came from both sides, rising like a tide of despair. Behind them, rot and ruin. Ahead, only death. Stratholme had claimed many lives, and now it was hungry once more. Years passed, and still the ruins of Stratholme festered beneath a sky that had long forgotten the sun. But the city's soul remained choked in undeath. Stratholme had become the largest scourge stronghold in all of Lordaeron, an open wound in the heart of the kingdom. At its helm was a man who had once walked among the nobility of the living world, now twisted into something far more dreadful: Baron Rivendare. As a Death Knight, he ruled the city with an iron will and a heart long since stilled, coordinating the Lich King's dark campaigns across the Plaguelands. His forces clashed ceaselessly with the Scarlet Crusade and the Argent Dawn, two orders locked in holy war, both burning with zeal, but not always with clarity. And yet, one final bastion of life clung to the edge of this rotting city. The Scarlet Bastion, fortified and unyielding, remained under the control of the living. From within its blood-stained halls, the Grand Crusader Saidan Dathrhan rallied his knights to purge the undead with merciless conviction. But conviction had given way to fanaticism. To the Crusade, anyone outside their order, Argent Dawn, adventurer, or peasant, was seen as tainted, corrupted, worthy only of death. So the Argent Dawn acted. They sent heroes into the heart of Stratholme with orders to confront the Grand Crusader himself. What they found was no righteous commander. Saidan Dathrhan had been dead for years. In his place stood Balnazzar, the Dreadlord, who had once worn his skin like a mask. But this time the mask shattered, and the demon fell. Yet Stratholme was not done with the living. When Sylvanas Windrunner freed her champion, Nathanos Blightcaller, he hunted the monstrous Ramstein the Gorger across the Plaguelands. The beast, cornered and wounded, fled to Stratholme, seeking safety among the dead. Others would follow, and fall. One such soul was Antheon Harmon. He ventured into the cursed city in search of his wife. He never returned. The undead claimed him, as they had so many before. And in even later days, as Naxxramas fell and echoes of victory stirred in the frozen north, Stratholme remained a seedbed of fanaticism. A force of Crimson Crusaders marched from the city, faith twisted into fury, and seized the Scarlet Enclave, casting out their more tempered brethren and taking the bastion for their own. Stratholme endures, not as a city, but as a monument to ruin, vengeance, and the perilous line between salvation and damnation. By the time the world shook under the fury of the cataclysm, the smoldering ruins of Stratholme once again stirred with darkness. Balnazzar, defeated, exposed, and furious, cast aside his long-held disguise. No longer cloaked in the stolen flesh of a paladin, the Dreadlord revealed his true form in a blaze of wrath. And then he slaughtered them all. Every Scarlet Crusader stationed in the western quarter of the city fell by his hand, only to rise again as the Risen. Undead servants bound to his will, their fanatic oaths twisted into silence and servitude. To the east, change came just as grimly. Baron Rivendare, once the iron-willed Death Knight who ruled over Stratholme, had departed for Naxxramas. In his place now stood his son, Arius Rivendare, a fallen paladin whose heart had once burned with the light, and now pulsed with cold, undead malice. But the light had not forsaken Stratholme entirely. From the Brotherhood of the Light came champions determined to end the scourge once and for all. Crusade Commander Eligor Dawnbringer, Master Craftsman Wilhelm, Packmaster Stonebruiser, Commander Corfax, and the formidable Archmage Angela de Santos rallied adventurers to take the fight into the heart of the ruin. And strike they did. Both Arius and Balnazzar were brought low by blade and spell, Their dark reigns ended in fire and fury. With their deaths, the Argent Crusade surged forward, reclaiming ground inch by blood-stained inch. The Chapel of Alonza stood once more as a beacon of hope, while the Scarlet Bastion, once a seat of zealotry, was reforged into the Bastion of Light. For a time, the undead were driven back, and the city breathed again. But only for a time, for even in victory, the shadows of Stratholme linger. The dead do not rest easily, and neither does the city that keeps raising them. Even long after its fall, Stratholme refused to fade quietly into history. Each new era brought fresh blood to its blackened streets, and each time the city answered with death. During the Burning Legion's third invasion, it was the Knights of the Ebon Blade who dared to breach its cursed walls. Their purpose was grim and precise: to retrieve the saddle of Deathcharger, a relic bound to undeath and shadow. Within the rotting bones of the city, the Death Knights clashed with abominations left behind. Among them, a hulking patchwork horror, and the tormented ghost known as Vivien's Lament, whose mournful wails echoed through the firelit ruins. But Stratholme was not finished serving the light either. Not long after, the Reformed Order of the Silver Hand returned, led by their High Lord, to claim something once sacred, the city's holy water. It was needed to purify Shadowmane, the steed of Arius Rivendare, recently recovered from the vile Death Knight Ramian the Soul Taker. Ramian had sought to unleash a new wave of the undead plague to drown Azeroth in corruption once more, but the light had other plans. From the East Wall Gate, the Paladins stormed Elder's Square, sweeping aside the lingering dead with steel and sanctity. They claimed Alonza's chapel once again, turning the sacred hall into a beacon amid the ash, a bastion of purpose in a city still caught between the living and the damned. With fire and fury, they struck down Ramian and scattered the last remnants of the scourge that lurked in the city's heart. But even in victory, they knew better than to turn their backs on Stratholme. The Silver Hand vowed to keep watch, knowing that in this place, where faith met fire and life had bled so freely, darkness could always rise again. During the chaos of the Fourth War, Stratholme stirred once more. Though the world's eyes were fixed on battles across continents, something old and restless began to rise within the city's charred remains. Scourge activity surged in the ruins, and the Argent Crusade, ever watchful, detected a disturbance beneath the rot. Whispers of necromantic energy drifted through the city's burned corridors, thick as smoke. Sean Wilkers, a hardened crusader, led an expedition alongside a trusted adventurer to investigate the source. Their mission began at the Stratholme service entrance, where undead still wandered like forgotten memories. Blade by blade, spell by spell, they carved a path through the shambling dead, until they reached the slaughterhouse. There they found more than mindless husks. Two shadowy figures, cloaked in darkness and wielding twisted necromancy, were performing a dark ritual upon a monstrous beast, known as Blackmane. Their intent was unknown, but the power they conjured was unmistakable. Before Wilkers and the adventurer could strike, the figures vanished, slipping away into the shadows. Their work unfinished, but far from over. It seemed Stratholme still held secrets in its bones, and once again the living would have to chase ghosts through the ashes. In the aftermath of the Fourth War, as the world began to rebuild from its many scars, whispers still drifted from the charred husk of Stratholme. To most it was a dead city, a place of ghosts, rot, and memory. But not all who walked its streets were lost. Matthias Shaw, spy master of SI-7, issued a quiet report, one laced with caution and curiosity. For a dead city, he observed, there are still people living inside, surviving, somehow. Though he offered few details, many believe he was speaking of the faithful, remnants of the Argent Crusade and the Order of the Silver Hand. These stalwart souls had taken root in the ruins, clinging to holy ground within the Scarlet Bastion and Alonza's chapel. They did not flee, they endured. Among crumbling stones and haunted silence, they stood vigil, against the dark, against the scourge, and against the slow forgetting of what Stratholme once was. Now, I don't ask this a lot, but if you did enjoy the video, consider liking and subscribing, helps the channel out. With all that said, hopefully you did enjoy. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourself, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.